Hey, fifth graders, we're going to go ahead and start learning about a new idea today called reciprocals. And this is a really important new vocabulary word for you. So the mathematical meaning of reciprocals are, they are numbers, two numbers, whose product is 1. Now remember, product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So when we're dealing with reciprocals, when we're trying to figure out what numbers are reciprocals, we're going to need to multiply them together and get an answer of 1. If we don't get a product of 1, they are not reciprocals. So let's talk about how we can find the reciprocal of proper fractions. So if I want to multiply 3/4 by a number to give me 1, well, I'm actually just going to flip the fraction, because by doing that, I would then have 4/3. Now, remember, when we multiply fractions, we multiply straight across. So this would actually give me 12/12, which is 1, like I desired. So your reciprocal, the reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. So you just flip that fraction. Now notice I'm going to go ahead and separate this by using a comma. So it's 4/3, which is equal to 1 1/3. So 1 1/3 is the reciprocal of 3/4. Let's look at another example. 1/3, I'm going to go ahead and flip this, and I get 3/1, or just 3. Let's double check and make sure when I multiply these together that I do indeed get 1 whole thing. So when I multiply straight across, I'm getting 3/3, which is equivalent to 1. So 1/3 and 3 are indeed reciprocals of one another. Now we've got one more example here. 10/21. I'm going to go ahead and flip those. And I get 210 210ths, which is equivalent to 1. So the reciprocal of 10/21 is 21/10, which is equal to 2 1/10 when we turn that into a mixed number. Now again, notice how I'm not saying that these two things are equal, because there's no way that 10/21, which is less than a whole thing, could ever be equal to 2 whole things and then some. Let's go ahead and look at whole numbers. So when we're finding the reciprocal of whole numbers, we're going to turn it into a fraction first by putting it over 1, then flip that fraction. So remember, 2 is exactly the same thing as 2/1. So if I'm finding the reciprocal, I'm going to go ahead and flip these, and I get 1/2. And let's see, is it true that 2 times 1/2 gives us 1? Yeah, it gives us 2 halves, which is equivalent to 1, just like we needed. So 2 and 1/2 are reciprocals. So if we look at 20, I'm going to put 20/1, and then I'm going to flip it, so I get 1/20. Let's multiply those two values and make sure that we get 1. We get 20/20, which is indeed 1. And the last one here, 5. We'll throw 5/1 and flip that, and we get 1/5. Because is it true that 5 times 1/5 is equivalent to 1? It sure is, because it gives us 5/5, which is indeed equivalent to 1. Now this is the most challenging of them all when we are finding the reciprocals of mixed numbers, because students tend to make the same mistake that is utterly wrong. As you know, we call that the cow move. Students make a major cow move here. The cow move that they make is they only flip the fraction part. They ignore the whole number, and that's a massive problem. Because if we were, let's just talk this one through, if we were just to flip the fraction part, this would become 3 2/1, which is 5. Now if you multiply 3.5 by 5, is there any way you could possibly become 1? No, you're going to become in fact 17.5, which is far from 1. So the first thing we need to do is turn it into an improper fraction. That's super duper important. Turn it into an improper fraction first, then flip the fraction. So we're going to use our times e plus e skills, multiply your denominator by the whole number, add it to the numerator, and this is equivalent to 7/2. So the reciprocal will be 2/7. Now let's double check and make sure. Is it true that 3.5, half, not a third, sorry, times 2/7, let's see if that indeed gives us 1. Now remember, when we multiply mixed numbers, you've got to turn it into an improper fraction first, so that's 7/2 times 2/7, and we get 14/14, which is indeed equal to 1. So your reciprocal of 3.5 is 2/7. Let's do the next one. We must turn this into an improper fraction first. That's 14/5, and the reciprocal of that will be 5/14. Let's double check. Is it true that 14/5 times 5/14 gives us 1 whole thing? I want to mention that you can use your cross simplifying. 5 goes into 5 once, so we can simplify those. 14 goes into 14 once, and we directly get 1 whole thing just like we needed. And the last one, we're going to go ahead and use our times E plus E skills. This is equivalent to 5/3. So our reciprocal is going to be 3/5. So let's double check. Is it true that 5/3 times 3/5, does that give us 1? Yes, it does. It gives us 15/15, which is indeed equivalent to 1. So in order to help students remember the meaning of reciprocal, I've come up with a little saying. When you hear reciprocal, think refliprical. Now, do not say this out loud, because refliprical has no meaning whatsoever. I made that up. It's not a math term. It is simply a way for you to remember it. So you think refliprical, but you say the proper vocabulary word, which is reciprocal. Let's do a couple together on the back, and then you can check the answer key on the website for the rest of them. So this says, try it yourself. Find the reciprocals of the following fractions. Prove that your answer is indeed the reciprocal by multiplying them together, and make sure you get a product of 1. If you don't get a product of 1, you didn't do it correctly. So 2/3, I'm going to go ahead and flip that. I'm going to multiply by 3/2. Let me double check this work. I get 6/6, which is indeed 1. This next one I'm going to go ahead and flip because that's a proper fraction, so I'm just going to go ahead and flip this. And I get 7/6. Let's double check and make sure that when we multiply these together, we do indeed get 1. When you multiply straight across, we get 42/42, which is indeed equivalent to 1. So I know they are reciprocals. Let's do 2 more. The mixed number, remember, you've got to turn that into an improper fraction first. So that's 3/2 times 2/3. That'll give us 6/6, which is 1. So your reciprocal here is 2/3. Sorry, it's a little sloppy. And then 6, we need to put 6 over 1 and flip that, and we get 1/6. Let's double check and make sure that 1/6 times 6, yep, that gives us 6 over 6, which is indeed equivalent to 1. So go ahead and complete this on your own, and check the website for the answer key.